On a summer morning in 1967, Australia's Prime Minister walked into the ocean for a swim. Minutes later, he vanished forever. Despite one of the largest search operations in Australian history, no body was ever found. Harold Holt arrived at Cheviot Beach just after midday, stepping out of his car with a small group of friends. The sun was high, the heat sharp, but the ocean was anything but inviting. Waves crashed against the shore, churning up foam and pulling at the sand with a force that left even seasoned locals uneasy. Marjorie Gillespie, one of Holt's companions, later recalled that the surf was higher than she had ever seen it. Alan Stewart and Martin Simpson, both present that day, described a strong undercurrent swirling around their legs, enough to make even the confident hesitate. Yet Holt showed no sign of doubt. Dressed in blue swim trunks, he walked straight toward the water, barely pausing before wading in. Gillespie remarked that she knew the beach well, but Holt, with a half smile, replied, "I know this beach like the back of my hand." He pushed out beyond the breakers, his head bobbing in the swell as the others lingered closer to shore. Simpson, wary of the pool beneath the surface, stayed in the shallows, splashing around but never venturing far. Stewart went a little deeper, only to stop abruptly when the undertow tugged at his feet, forcing him back. Within minutes, Holt was gone from view. Gillespie and Stewart moved along the beach, climbing onto a rock for a better vantage, but there was nothing. No splash, no cry, just the relentless roar of the surf. The group searched the waterline, calling his name, but the sea offered no answer. The timeline, reconstructed from their sworn police statements, narrows the window of Holt's disappearance to less than 5 minutes from his first step into the waves. In that short span, Australia's Prime Minister simply vanished, leaving behind only stunned witnesses and a mystery that would grip the nation for decades. Panic crept in as the group realised Holt was no longer visible. They scanned the surf, calling his name, but the sea answered with only noise and spray. There was no sign of distress, no shout for help, just the empty space where he had been moments before. For a few stunned seconds, confusion reigned. Had he ducked under a wave, drifted behind a swell, or simply slipped from sight? The beach, moments earlier filled with casual conversation, now felt suspended in uncertainty. No one could say exactly when or how it happened. The absence itself pressed in, heavy and inexplicable. In those first minutes, an ordinary swim was transformed into a crisis with no clear explanation. The group's calls faded into the wind, and the question hung in the air. How could a man, let alone the Prime Minister, vanish without a trace in broad daylight? Emergency calls raced across the peninsula as soon as Holt's friends realised he was missing. Within 2 hours, Cheviot Beach was transformed. Police cars lined the access road, while naval patrol boats and helicopters swept the surf zone. The Royal Australian Navy sent in divers, fighting to stay under, in water whipped by 3-metre waves. The Royal Australian Air Force launched C-130 flights, and Bell helicopters circling low in search of any sign, a flash of colour, a drifting body, a scrap of clothing. Victoria Police deployed marine patrols and ground teams, while surf lifesavers and local volunteers combed the sand and rocky outcrops shoulder to shoulder for hours on end. The scale of the operation was unprecedented. 8 Navy vessels, 2 police launches, 3 civilian boats and more than 400 volunteers worked in shifts, covering every metre of coastline and every patch of turbulent water. Yet the searchers faced relentless obstacles. The sea floor dropped sharply just offshore, plunging to 30 metres in less than a minute's swim. Rip currents, modelled later by oceanographers, could drag even the strongest swimmer far out to Bass Strait before anyone could react. Underwater visibility was nearly zero, with sand and foam swirling in the breakers. Helicopter crews reported nothing but whitecaps and shadows. Sonar equipment, primitive by today's standards, could not penetrate the chaos below. For 6 days, the search widened, then faltered. Not a single trace of Harold Holt was ever found, not a body, not a shred of fabric, not a personal belonging. The effort became a grim ritual, boats circling, divers surfacing empty-handed, searchers staring at the unbroken sea. The official record closed with no answers, only the chilling fact of a Prime Minister who had vanished, leaving behind an empty beach and a nation suspended between hope and disbelief. Harold Holt was not just another politician lost to history. He was, at the moment he vanished, the sitting Prime Minister of Australia, a leader whose presence shaped both the government and the country's sense of itself. Born in 1908, Holt had spent more than 3 decades in federal politics, rising steadily through the ranks before taking the top job in January 1966. His government had recently deepened Australia's alliance with the United States, sending troops to Vietnam and cementing the all the way with LBJ partnership that defined the era. Domestically, he championed the 1967 referendum granting Indigenous Australians full citizenship, and he presided over the introduction of decimal currency. Holt's public image was energetic, modern, and approachable. He was often photographed outdoors, sleeves rolled up, and was known for his love of the ocean. Friends and colleagues described him as a strong swimmer, someone who relished the challenge of open water. Cheviot Beach was a favourite spot. He had swum there many times before, always confident in his abilities and dismissive of warnings about the surf. That confidence was part of his appeal, but it also masked a vulnerability. Just weeks before his disappearance, Holt suffered a significant injury to his right shoulder while gardening. To manage the pain, he relied on a mixture of morphine and aspirin, a detail that would later trouble investigators. The injury may have weakened his stroke and the medication could have dulled his reflexes, but there was no outward sign that Holt felt unwell or unfit that day. The shock of his disappearance was magnified by the man he was, a leader at the height of his influence, trusted to guide the nation through turbulent times. His sudden absence left not only a government in crisis, but a public struggling to comprehend how someone so central, so visible, could simply vanish. In the days that followed, the question was not just where Holt had gone, but how such a thing could happen to a man who seemed, until that moment, larger than life. With no body found and no clear explanation, the silence around Harold Holt's disappearance quickly became fertile ground for speculation. In the weeks and years that followed, rumours grew bigger than the facts. Some claimed Holt had staged his own death, slipping away to start a new life, far from the pressures of office. Others insisted he was spirited away by a foreign submarine, most often Chinese or Soviet, waiting just beyond the breakers. The idea that Australia's leader could vanish into the hands of shadowy forces fit neatly into the Cold War mood of suspicion and intrigue. Another strand of gossip suggested Holt was entangled in secret intelligence work, perhaps even a double agent, and that his disappearance was a carefully planned extraction. Each theory found its audience, fueled by the strange circumstances and the utter lack of physical evidence. Yet, when tested against the record, these stories fall apart. Naval logs from the day show no trace of any submarine near Cheviot Beach. Police statements and search reports reveal no sign of covert activity or hidden accomplices. No credible document has ever surfaced to suggest a planned escape or intelligence plot. What remains is a void. One that facts alone have never been able to fill and that rumour has only made deeper. Investigators, after months of interviews and exhaustive review of the physical evidence, reached a conclusion that is as stark as it is unsatisfying. The overwhelming weight of testimony, oceanographic analysis, and search records points to a single, devastatingly simple answer. Harold Holt drowned at Cheviot Beach, swept out by a powerful rip current in conditions that would have tested even the fittest swimmer. The beach itself holds part of the explanation. Cheviot is notorious for its steep underwater slope, a drop from shallow surf to 30 metres deep in less than a minute's swim. On the afternoon of December 17th, the tide was high, the wind brisk, and the currents running hard out to Bass Strait. Oceanographers later modelled those currents, finding that a swimmer could be pulled under and out of sight in seconds, carried far beyond the reach of boats or divers. It is a pattern seen in other tragedies at Cheviot, where more than 70% of drowning victims have vanished without a trace. The fact that no body was ever recovered is not a contradiction to the drowning theory, but a grim confirmation of the sea's power and the limitations of search technology in the 1960s. Police, Navy, and coroners all found no evidence of foul play, no trace of a submarine, no sign of a staged disappearance. Only the relentless, indifferent mechanics of ocean and tide. Yet even as the official record closes around this explanation, a gap remains. Without final proof, without a body, a last word, a visible end, the story refuses to settle. The evidence narrows to a single probable cause, but the emotional mystery endures, kept alive by the silence of the sea and the absence at the heart of the nation. Australia still lives with a Prime Minister lost, not found. No body, no final answer. The official record says accident, but the void keeps the mystery alive. Was it tragedy or something more? In a world craving certainty, some mysteries refuse to be buried. What do you believe?